So, hi, Diana. I'm
Hi,
really,
Rosalva.
here I go interrupting again. I have a habit of interrupting people. I just wanted to say I'm really glad you're coming on Saturday. I've been so looking forward to this. You've been doing work on the collective for quite some time, and I've just begun to explore the collective. As I said before, I was interested in the collective after my family was kind of put in a good place.
Mm.
And of course, I've come back from Virginia Beach where the focus was the collective. And you're just done a workshop in Calgary. You're just finished, wrapped up
Yeah.
on the collective again. And we're going to do one on the soul of Canada, merging the personal and the collective. What
Yeah.
did you discover in Calgary? What can you share?
So I was doing a workshop where I combined your and my research project on the Conscious Witness project. So we were experimenting with that, and that for me is part of working collectively. How can we become really global witnesses for what's going on in the world now, and really learn to not be doing that from the um, you know victim tyrant view of witnessing or denying or anything, but that we can move ourselves to being able to see and feel compassion for the world. So I introduced that here, and it was very well received.
All
And
right.
then we did a couple of constellations that would, for me, collective constellation, or I'm now using the word constellating for the collective, because that's more true for me. What the process I'm using is the constellation process that we use in family and organizational, and applying it to collective issues or social justice issues or cities or communities. So applying it. So we did two big ones on this Friday night and Saturday. One was on behalf of Ukraine.
Hmm.
And I mentioned to you, which was we were all totally amazed because we did this. I mean, most of us attending knew nothing about the Ukraine, and one woman brought the issue, and who's from there. And the next day in the Globe and Mail, there was an article on the Ukraine, and it pretty well we had mapped the system that the article was talking about. So everybody was like, "Oh, wow, that's amazing." That was sort of very quick response from the universe that we were in line with something. And then yesterday we did a constellation on really finding our place with Indigenous issues. And the question we asked was, and I have to refer because I never, the question was, what prevents us from respecting Indigenous people? So the us was, colonizers, settlers, those of us who've come from other lands rather than who were here before us. And it was very powerful and moving. And for me, this work is about helping. Well, what it does do is allows us to see a much bigger picture than we usually do from our family or our organization. So we get to see a whole system and work inside that and feel and experience it, and then take that. So I think that's helping the collective when we do that, the bigger system. But it also, personally, what happens is the feedback I'm getting from people is, oh, I really like seeing the big picture. It changes my perspective. And I find it very interesting. Very often people will say, it gives me hope. So, we're living in such challenging times, but somehow when we allow ourselves to fully participate in a bigger system and be there, something changes in us about our relationship with what's going on right now. And so it has real personal impact also.
Now,
So,
there's a danger too in working with the bigger system too.
yeah.
I think you were telling me before that Francesca Mason-Bourne suggested that we need to ensure that we keep in mind spiritual bypass. Can you say more about
Yeah. Do you know that? Well, so, so for me, spiritual bypassing is where you move into being a helper, usually, for something that's not you think it's not your issue, it's way out there. So in this case, we could think that we are serving the refugees coming into Canada, or, something like that, and see it as separate from what's going on inside us. And so spiritual bypassing is doing that. You use what you're doing in a bigger system to not look at your own system. And the way I work is very much that we need to continually, constantly be looking at ourselves and our own family system, and are we clear, and can we come into the field from that? I see that as a development. So in the workshops, and we'll be doing this together next weekend, is that there'll be opportunities to do both personal and collective work on the issues that we're focusing on, which is Soul of Canada, a settlers workshop. So the content will be focused there, and will allow time for people to receive personal information that they can take away, as well as doing stuff for the collective. And I think you were mentioning, which I really like the idea, that the participants will have an opportunity to perhaps see something that's in their own lineage that needs to be cleared. Now, we're not using next weekend, unlike a family workshop, we're not using next weekend for people to do that actual clearing work, but they'll know if there's work that needs to be done personally.
My thought is we can give them some tools of how they might be able to do that work, and where they continue it outside of the workshop. So I'm really excited about that piece. I'm also excited about the idea of looking at the history of Canada and looking at our entry points and what we brought with us, especially since I've been writing about that too. I'm curious as to how much of that I've cleared up and how much of it is still left to be cleared up, because there's always so much more.
Yeah. I think the project, the language I'm using, because I'm very involved in living into right relations with Indigenous, and for me, what the first step is, I need to decolonize myself, and so that's a language that I'm comfortable with. Some others aren't, but for me, that's a process where I use constellation work to do that, and I also do other ways of clearing, that we need to wake up to how in our beings we're, like, our mindset, the way we see things, it's colonized, right? Even if we don't want to be, that's the big thing. I mean, I don't want to be, but there's still a part of me that's carries that, right?
I think it's a whole workshop. I think it's a whole weekend workshop. I think, one of the things we were talking about, I wonder what this might be followed up with. I think it would be a weekend workshop on how to decolonize ourselves and have the tools to continue to do that moving forward. I think we need to talk about that.
Yeah, well, and one of the things we worked with yesterday was the force of colonization. As a force.
As a force.
It was really, really interesting information. So we could also bring that in, because it's people, but there's actually, like, there's a force of creativity and destruction. Yeah. There's actually a force that's colonization that has been across cultures, across history. I mean, it's not just Canada. This is like ancient times people were colonizing each other, right? I mean, in Britain, the Romans colonized.
Oh, no, not the Romans. They just built roads.
Anyway, so, yeah.
Okay, really excited, looking forward to it. And anyway, I just can't say enough. The more
thank you for bringing me. I'm very excited because I feel totally passionate about this work. I'm really happy to join you.
Great. See you on Friday.
Okay, bye.